Well, hello traders and investors. I'm L.A. Little and this is your daily NeoTA wrap. We take a look at these markets and we're doing it in a different way. We look at it neoclassically. And what does that mean? We look at supply and demand on the charts and we ask ourselves what's significant and what does it tell us about trend and timing. That's the model I created. That's the model we use. And that's what this show is all about. What happened today? Let's take a look at the numbers and see. So today we actually had liftoff. We had a breakout across the board. We actually had some really good action in most areas. We'll look at that. I saw gold and silver, some good tells there that we'll try to take a look at. And in general, what we've been waiting on, it looks like it is starting to take place. Looking at the numbers, the NDX is up 0.3%, the S&P up 0.5%. And if you notice here, NDX actually underperforming today compared to the other indexes. That has been different up until today. I've been talking about it over and over saying, hey, we got to get rotation. If this market's going to go higher, this is rotation. That's what you want to see. If you look at the Nasdaq up 0.5%. Who was the outperforming today? It was the small caps, and that's exactly where you need a rotation to, and that's where we got it. Gold, silver, they sell off. The bonds sell off. Elsewhere, equities around the world, they're all up. Let's look at the charts. Let's start here with the S&P 500. So if we look at the S&P, what does it do today? It breaks out. What does it break out over? It breaks out over a swing point high. That says you're doing either a trend transition or trend affirmation. You already have a trend that is on the upside. And so what this is telling you is that this is a reaffirmation that this trend is higher. So you were bullish before. You continue to be bullish on this breakout. This is your bullish bar. You had a suspect bullish there. You had a confirmed bullish there. Same thing over here. What does that tell you? This trend has been in place for a while. You did get a trend transition here, so it's about 50% complete if you look at the mean time to failure of this trend. Breakout. We don't know about the volume here because we don't have the end volumes in today. But what we can do is we can shift over and look at the SPY and get a clue even without the volume here. And that volume on the SPY in terms of the breakout bar is higher. And so you have a confirmed breakout if in fact the volumes come in about the same on the indexes. And I suspect that they will. If you pull over the weekly chart, look at the weekly chart, and we'll look at it here on the SPY, same thing on the S&P. Continuation of that grind higher. So pulling it back, thinking about it in the bigger picture, what you have is you have a market that has been moving up, right? Consolidating and grinding higher at the same time. And so it doesn't want to give anything back. That's probably one of the most bullish markets you can get, a market that will not pull back. And if you look back historically at markets that do not pull back, they are the best markets for you to be invested in, even though it's hard to buy those kinds of markets. If we look elsewhere, pull over and look at the NDX, the Nasdaq. Let's look at the Nasdaq first. It was up 0.5%, so it had a pretty good day as well. You see the extension there. Even though the NDX wasn't up that much, the index does close at a new high today, so there was no failure of any sort. And then finally, if we look at the Russell, what you're going to see on the Russell is a huge gapping bar back up into this top of this range. Now remember, the Russell has swing point highs all along the top of this range. There's multiples. Well, that one actually got broken right here, but there's 4 other ones that have accumulated now. What does it mean to have swing point highs there? Well, if you go up and you start breaking all these swing point highs, and you're going to break them here, and if you break them here, you're going to break this one on the weekly too. Multiple swing point highs, multiple time frames. When those break, you usually get 2 to 3 bars extension of that swing point high break on the longest time frame. That says this market will probably push higher if this breaks. It will push higher for 2 to 3 bars, 2 to 3 weeks longer on the upside. So I don't see anything. We actually had a comment last night. The comment was that these markets, if it's the Russell that's killing us, everything else, if it's the NDX, we'd be taking profits. Well, here's the Russell starting to push to the upside, and it's really the sort of thing that you want to see if you want to be long in these markets. I'm going to pop over, look at the gold, silver. As the equity markets move up, what typically happens is you get pressure on those other things that were moving up when the equities were struggling. in particular the gold and silver market. So what does gold do today? Gold, it actually doesn't fell at the top, but it does get a bearish engulfing, which says it's probably going to come back and test this swing point high. Now, gold has had a nice run, right? Remember last night we were talking about it overextended. Now it's coming back. It's probably going to do that bullish retest regen. This will be the next area that one can look at if you want to buy it. That would be the next area to look at it. If you pull over though and look at it on the weekly, this is the key bar. It came into the high volume bar. That's your anchor bar. Comes into that big anchor bar. Now that's a wide price spread and high volume. That's the strongest resistance you can find. As it comes into it, what does it do? Touches into it, fails, and it's going to fail on less volume. What does that tell you? People that were buying are unwilling to buy at that price point. That says, if you can't go up, folks, you're going to come down. This thing's going to retrace. And so you want to be patient. You want to look at it as it retraces, measure it up. That's where you want to jump in if you want to buy this market. So far, it's failing right where it probably should fail. There was two spots. One was that bar. One was the other bar. It got into the other one. That was this one. Not quite as much volume here, but it got into that one, right, and held into it. That was this week. But what is it doing? It's going into the next one. It just tells you, and that's what this red area is telling you, that's heavy area that people are going to sell. And that's exactly what they're doing, and it's exactly what you expect. And if they're doing it here, they're buying the equity markets at the same time because they're moving opposite of each other at this particular point in time. That's the two major things. I looked at the currencies earlier. Currencies didn't really give us any kind of good tell today. You did see that little ABCD structure that we were talking about on the UUP. You saw that starting to develop today. Here's that structure we were talking about last night. Takes you up to about 26.26. Not that much farther to go, but that's where it's targeted to. And as it does that, it's going to come into this swing point high, and it's going to come into that. That's just like we just saw in the gold market. That's going to be tough to get over. I expect that's where the sellers are going to show up if in fact they want to sell it. If we look elsewhere, let's see, was there something else I wanted to talk about? Oh yeah, it was the financials that I wanted to talk about. So on the financials here, financials are a major component. They're one of the higher weighted components in the S&P 500. And so if you're going to get a big move, small caps is a big piece of it, but the financials are a big piece too. And just as we saw on the small caps, look at all these swing point highs that have formed on these financials. If these financials break out here, they'll break a swing point high multiple time frames again, just like we were talking about on the IWM, on the Russell 2000. They'll break it 2 to 3 bars extension on that time frame, and if that's the case, that's another 2 to 3 weeks if you get that breakout. So you got some good action starting to take place here. It's taking place in some good sectors, and it's taking place on a good index. I like the action that I see here. I think we're finally getting that move. The thing you have to be concerned about is the mindless activity that we've seen of late, and let me remind you of what that looks like over here on the S&P 500. Now, what I mean by mindless action is over the last 2 weeks, right, you had the breakout, and what did it do? Consolidated and then came right back, broke down to the backside, then it broke out and hang around, and now you're getting the breakout again. Are we going to see the mindless action where it just hangs here and it can't extend? Or are we going to see the extension? What you want to see, if you're bullish on this market, if you're invested in this market, you want to see extension tomorrow. You want to see that Russell break over those highs. You want to see the financials break over their highs. You want to see this extend higher. That will tell you the move's for real, and another leg up is underway. Have a great night. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you next time. Good night.